In this demonstration, we'll take a look at splitting our class files up into a header and an implementation file. In order to do this, we'll recreate the person class for this demonstration. In Visual Studio, I'll go to my header files folder within my Solution Explorer, right-click and choose to add a new item. I'll ensure that I select the header file and I will give it the name person because we're going to recreate our person class. Once I click the Add button, you'll see that Visual Studio automatically adds the person.h, or the header portion of the file, to our header files folder. Now, to save a little bit of typing, I've already copied the code that we want, so I'll just paste it in here for now. And this basically completes the definition of our class within the header file. So we have the opening class person, and note that because it's a header file, we have a semicolon at the end of our curly brace. We have 3 private member variables, 2 strings to hold first and last names, and an integer to hold the age. We have 3 constructors, a default constructor, one that accepts 2 arguments and one that accepts 3 arguments. And in the implementation file, we'll fill in the necessary application logic to ensure that when we get the values passed into these, that we will update the member variables accordingly. We also have a destructor in our class, and we have one function called sayHello, which accepts no arguments and returns no values. Now, we don't have our implementation file yet, and this header file is just what we will import into portions of a code or application that will use our class file. But we need to actually go ahead and implement the code that will do the functionality that we want our person class to be able to perform when we use it in an application. Depending on the integrated development environment that you're using, whatever tool you may be using, this may be easier for you, or you might have to actually type the code in yourself. And one of the things that Visual Studio allows us to do is go ahead and it will write some of the code for us. Now, you'll notice that under each of my constructors, my destructor, and my function, I actually have a little green squiggly line. If I hover my mouse over it, you'll see that I have some actions that are available to me. Now, this depends on the version of Visual Studio that you have, and I'm currently using Visual Studio 2015. By clicking the little drop-down arrow next to the light bulb, I can select from a couple of different options. And in this case, I want to create the definition of the person class, or the person constructor, inside my implementation file, the person.cpp. So if I select this option, a couple of things take place. First of all, Visual Studio pops up this nice little window that shows me what it has done in person.cpp. Now, you might remember, we didn't actually create the person.cpp implementation file, but because we're going to implement the functionality, Visual Studio has automatically created that CPP file for us, and it's gone ahead and added the implementation portion for our person constructor, or the default constructor. And it has automatically included our person.h portion of the code for us. So let's go back to our person.h file, and I'll just close this so that we don't have any clutter on the screen. And I'm going to do precisely the same thing for my other constructors. So we've created that constructor now, and we will create this constructor. We'll ask it to go ahead and create the destructor definition, and then finally we'll ask it to create the definition of the sayHello method inside person.cpp. So now all of my little green squigglies have disappeared. I actually have my person.h file is complete. I have the include string, so I brought in the string library up here for the string data type. And then if we switch over to our implementation file, person.cpp, we will see that we have included the person.h, we have our default constructor, the constructor that accepts the 2 names, the constructor that will accept the 2 names and the age, our destructor, and our sayHello. So we haven't implemented any of the code in this yet, but we'll get to that in the next demonstration, where we'll talk about constructors and then calling the different functions and constructors that we have within our code.